The Syntronik V80 is based on the classic Yamaha CS-80, GX-1, and CS-01 synths. Manufactured from 1976 to 1980, the CS-80 was Yamaha's flagship take on the analog polysynth. The CS-80's voice architecture is an exercise in layering, filtering, and modulation. Each selectable shape oscillator has its own high-pass and low-pass filter and envelope controls. The sound is fat and organic, and even the slightest introduction of the resonant high-pass filter can add a phasey quality to the instrument that gives it even more depth. The giant GX-1 is not exactly 2 1/4 CS-80 synths, but that comparison is a good place to start. Manufactured in extremely small quantities at an enormous price tag, it was only used by the most premier artists in the late 70s, such as Keith Emerson, Stevie Wonder, Led Zeppelin's John Paul Jones, and ABBA's Benny Andersson. In contrast, the tiny CS-01 is a simple single oscillator monophonic analog synthesizer with a selectable shape waveform going into a 4-pole resonant filter. It has a single LFO, single envelope generator, and is a highly musical sounding synthesizer despite its diminutive size. Syntronik's J60 brings users the sound of the Roland Juno-60. Manufactured from 1982 to 1984, the Juno-60 was the lower-priced alternative to the very expensive Jupiter-8, but it found a place in music production all its own. The Juno-60 uses the same Roland IR3109 filter chip as the Jupiter-8 with its 4-pole resonating low-pass filter and a non-sweepable high-pass filter. The Juno-60 uses DCOs, digitally controlled oscillators, for better tuning stability than the Jupiter's VCOs, or voltage-controlled oscillators. But with stability comes a price. The DCO sound is arguably more static and less interesting than the swirling unpredictability of VCOs. The Juno-60 also has only 1 oscillator per voice versus the Jupiter's 2. Because of this, oscillator detuning is not possible on the Juno-60. But Roland added a beautiful sounding analog chorus effect to compensate for this. The result is an instrument with its own character and style that is treasured in synthesizer history. The Roland JX10 Super JX, JX8P, and JX3P are brought to life in the Syntronik DCO-X. Manufactured from 1983 to 1989, the JX line expanded Roland's use of DCOs, digitally controlled oscillator technology, from the Juno-60 in an attempt to compete with the Yamaha DX-7 digital FM synthesizer that ruled the mid-80s. The JX models employ 2 oscillators per voice instead of the single oscillator of the Juno-60. This allows for classic oscillator detuning for the traditional analog synth sounds that we all know and love, but also cross-modulation where one oscillator modulates the other. And while Roland added the second oscillator, they kept the beautiful chorus from the Juno-60. The JX synths are definitely fat and warm, but in a more mid-rangey, horn-like way than the Jupiter and Juno. This makes the JX ideal for dark pads and brass sounds, in addition to its unusual FM, metallic, and percussive tones.